Talk to me about performance-enhancing drugs.
Yeah.
We've got new tests in the last year or so with USADA.
Yeah.
I would love to get just a general thought on performance-enhancing drugs. It's so easy to come in here, start pointing the finger at this person, at that person. You know, in bodybuilding, as Dorian Yates said when he was here, he said people look at bodybuilding because it's the most obvious version of people using performance-enhancing drugs. But we know that Lance Armstrong, when he's weighing in at 60 kgs, is also using them. And we know that there are in so many sports, whether it's CrossFit or I don't even know NFL or basketball, I don't know.
Yeah.
You see it on the front lines.
Yeah.
There's new testing involved. But, as Dorian would say, in any sport where performance is measured and people are pushing the limits, things are going to be used.
Yeah.
And you've worked with athletes in the past that, of course, then subsequently have tested positive.
Yeah.
What's your view on this whole crazy issue that is performance-enhancing drugs?
Oh, performance-enhancing drugs work. Let's not pretend that they don't. The damn things work extremely well, which is why so many athletes are willing to risk their careers by taking them, because of what those very same little black pills can do for their careers. And you look at a Lance Armstrong, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. I heard Lance Armstrong was able to generate billions of dollars for his sponsors and outside investors and such. Whether that's true or not, we know Lance became a multimillionaire many times over while using performance-enhancing drugs. We also know and can say with utmost certainty that the vast majority of those on the bikes behind Lance were also on performance-enhancing drugs. That everybody in that line knew that Lance was on, and very few, and I shouldn't say everybody, that the majority knew, and the majority most likely were taking things similar to what Lance was taking so they could catch up, because they're not riding a bike at 10,000 feet elevation for days on end, killing themselves to lose or to not make money. They're not doing it just for the fun and for the hell of it. Professional cyclists, just like any professional athlete. You look at the Olympics, how many Olympians have tested positive? Even, I forget the cross country, I don't know the exact sports, the Olympic sport, kind of cross country skiing with
biathlon.
They
tested for something.
And one of them recently tested positive for a performance-enhancing drug. That's not a contact sport. One would say there's very little athleticism that goes into that. I understand, because I'm a coach, I work with athletes, I understand the athletic demand. Positive. You look at, Marion Jones, let's say, the track and field athlete, positive. You look inside the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, you look at all those major sports, you are going to find positive drug tests everywhere. And what's funny and what I respect about the UFC, but it is frustrating in a way, the UFC has the best drug testing program in all of professional sports, including the Olympics. They have an independent body coming in, testing the athletes, blood test, urine test, randomly, by surprise, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, which is why you see so many drug failures in the UFC right now. Lyoto Machida was just pulled from the recent card. Another young man, Russian kid, Khabib Nurmagomedov's training partner, trains at AKA, pulled from the card. 2 athletes pulled from the very same UFC card because of their surprise drug tests. That's amazing. That shows a lot of intent on the part of the UFC brain trust to clean up their sport, that they're losing. I mean, Machida versus Dan Henderson, that was a co-main event. That's a marquee fight. How many people tuned out possibly because of that? That cost the UFC money, and it cost the UFC money to bring in USADA. USADA is doing an absolutely amazing job running these tests, which is why we see so many failures. But I don't believe, yes, there is a massive drug problem in all of professional sports. I don't believe it is disproportionate in the UFC or MMA. What is disproportionate is the protocols the other sports agencies are using to test their athletes, because of the players' union and because of back channeling and gentlemen's agreements of the times and the types of tests that the other NFL, NBA, MLB, tennis, golf, all those other athletes are not subjected to the same strict criteria that the UFC athletes are. So and when I said earlier, it's frustrating because I'm involved in the sport of mixed martial arts. And I see our athletes failing drug tests, and it makes our sport look like it's a dirtier sport. But our sport is no dirtier than any of the applauded professional sports, including the Olympics, which I'll throw them into professional level because most of them make high-level sponsorships and such, although they're not paid for the actual games itself. Well, some Euro countries, they get paid, but there's a whole other issue that goes into that. So I think that's really what I come down to, the drug testing. The UFC by far has the best drug testing protocol in the world in any sport. Every other sport should catch up, but they won't catch up because Major League Baseball cannot deal with two players getting taken off the field right before the Yankees play the Red Sox because USADA showed up at their house 3 days before the game and found high levels of XYZ drug in their system. Not going to happen, would never happen, cost those organizations too much money. Players union firmly intact, handshake deal. You guys are going to get tested for these substances on these specific dates during these times of year, guys. Nobody's going to come test you. That's what all the other sports leagues are like. UFC, it's not like that.
Can you tell if an athlete's using performance-enhancing drugs by looking at them?
I believe I can tell with high levels of certainty that an athlete is on certain types of performance enhancers. But there are drugs out there that I don't even know. I don't even know exist. Now, on my podcast, I did an interview with an elite coach that works with CrossFit athletes and whatnot, and we were talking about the drug testing problem. And he said, well, here's the thing. There's 300 known performance-enhancing drugs. Only 200 or so of these drugs can actually be tested for and are being tested for by WADA, World Anti-Doping Agency protocols. So what are you talking about? It's like, well, there's another 100 drugs out there that improve performance as well or even better than some of the known drugs. We all know about steroids. We all know about growth hormone. We kind of know about those drugs. He said there's a whole list of drugs out there that most people don't even know exist. Most doctors don't even know exist. He said, but he helps athletes beat drug tests. He said, but people like me know about, and they're completely in their system when the tester shows up, and they'll never get popped. He said, right now, because they're not testing for it. He said, now, 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road, that list constantly changes, but the drug testers are always a few steps behind the drug cheats.
Right.
So there's this,
But they're saving samples now too, so they can test you retroactively.
Which is awesome.
Okay.
Now, what happens down the road if 6-10 years down the road, super world champion millionaire athlete gets busted? Well, they're still a millionaire. They're not going to give their money back.
Yeah.
Do they care? I don't think they care because now they're retired, they're invested, their IRA, their 401k, their real estate portfolio, kids are done through school. Well, they don't care, especially when they say, well, the majority of people I fought were doing it too. So you see that issue's there. But can I tell? I can tell with, I believe, a high level of certainty that some athletes are on certain drugs, the more known drugs that we all know about.
Yeah.
But there's drugs right now, that the new one that the kid on the Russian car, or the Russian kid got busted for, was the same drug Sharapova got just busted for earlier in the year. I never heard of that thing in my life. And allegedly, it costs $5 a month if you're living over in Russia. It's just like, and I spoke with a Russian wrestler at that same fight card, and he's like, oh yeah, everybody takes that. It's normal. Like, yeah, it works for your heart. It does something for the heart,
right? But
everybody knows the performance-enhancing benefits. He's like, yeah, the kids take that thing like it's creatine. Cultural change. And it took USADA up until the last year or so to even figure it out and put it on the ban list. So that's like one of the 100.
Yeah.
But there will be a new drug now that gets put into its place. So it's this crazy system. And I think to close out all these statements, I would love to see every professional sport agency use the UFC's drug testing program. USADA should be brought in, and they should be able to test anybody at any time, regardless of season or players union or contracts and arbitration and all that stuff. You want a clean sport, you bring in that team to do it. Blood, urine, I'm not, hair test,
right.
Open book. and you will see, I think the world would be shocked at how many athletes actually fail.
Right, CrossFitters, NFLers, NBAers, Major League Baseball, everything.
Everything.
To watch the rest of this fascinating interview, click on the link below and go to londonrealacademy.com. There you can sign in with your social media, log in and watch the rest of the episode for free, along with all of our episodes on London Real, my webinars, and all of our premium content, all located over at londonrealacademy.com. So click on the link below, you'll be directed there and you can watch the rest of this fascinating interview, and I'll see you there.